Thank you for joining me today, and welcome to my channel, Growing Modern Roots. Today we are going to be dyeing some fabric with flowers and leaves. Now this is going to be a hammer pattern dye, not a solid color. So if that's something you're interested in, you are in the right place. Here you are going to need alum powder, your natural dye material, extra clean dry cotton fabric, a large pot and stirring utensil, a digital scale, and lastly a bowl that is heat safe. What I have going on here is I have my alum powder. You can buy this online or in a grocery store. And this is going to prepare our organic cotton fabric to receive the dye from the flowers and leaves. The ratio for this is per every 100 grams of fabric, you need about 10 to 20 grams of alum. Now, the more alum that you use, the more saturated the color should be. We're going to go for 10 grams per 100 grams of fabric. So let's go ahead and measure out the weight of our fabric. Zero out. And it looks like we have 250 grams of fabric on the dot, which means that we will need 25 grams of alum. In a heat-proof bowl, I have some water boiling behind me. We are going to add in the alum, and then we are going to dissolve it with some boiling water. Now, I like to wear gloves for this part. This is food grade, but I just like to reduce any exposure to chemicals. This is not toxic, but just to be safe, we're gonna go ahead and do that. I prefer to use them whenever I am butchering a chicken or cutting up some meat. It just saves me some hand washing time. I already have to wash my hands 100 times a day, so the less the better because these hands are dry. Alright, so we have the scale zeroed out and we are going to measure out 25 grams because we have 250 grams of fabric here. It's best to stir up as little dust as possible just to be extra careful. And 25. Okay, let's go grab some boiling water. We're going to pour in just enough to get this nice and dissolved. Pour it in this way for you. Alright. Stir this up. Now we are going to fill our pot with some room temperature or tap water. Grab our alum mixture and we're going to mix it in so that it dissolves. And I like to dip the bowl in there, swirl it around to make sure that we get everything out. Alright, in the sink this goes. And now we are going to go ahead and get our fabric in there. A little trick that I have, because I find fabric always wants to float back up and you really do not want any fabric above the water with air bubbles in it. So I take one of my canning racks that I'm not going to use for canning again, and I use this to put on top of my fabric to hold it down so that it stays submerged. We're going to put our fabric in there and really squeeze it and work at it so that all of the fabric is nice and wet. You do not want any dry spots. As you can see here, I am just pressing quite firm to make sure we get all of those air bubbles out. And now I'm going to place the rack on top, which will hold it down nice and tight. Now that everything is nice and submerged and we have the heat on medium-high, we're going to bring this temperature up to 180 degrees. Now we will need to maintain that temperature for 45 minutes. So what I'm doing to make it easier on myself so I don't have to manage the stovetop is I've preheated the oven. So whenever this reaches the temperature, we'll put it in for 45 minutes and we will be good to go with no hassle. It has been 3 hours, so now I'm going to wring this out and hang it over the coop here to dry just until it's damp. We still want to have some moisture, but not too much. If it is too wet, then your flowers will bleed into the fabric. If it's too dry, then the colors will not saturate as well as you want them to. Good enough. Stretch it out. Right over here. Okay. Make sure there's still enough room for the chickens to get under it. All right. So it is pretty warm out here. I will probably only be leaving these out for half an hour. And whenever that's done, we'll get to stamping the flowers. What I've done is pulled the fabric inside. I have it laying on a nice hard table. And I also have my flowers of choice for today. This is perfect if someone has gifted you flowers and you want to preserve them forever. Why not put them into fabric? It's quite beautiful. You can also use anything from the garden. If you were out and about in a park, you could pick some flowers and leaves there. And the cool part is you never really know what you're going to get in terms of color. So these white flowers here can end up being yellow or green. It really depends on the pH and all kinds of different factors. So it's a lot of fun to play around with and see what you get. And here is the final product after washing and drying. just beautiful. It is so soft. I would like to let you know that whenever you do buy flowers from a store, they often have residue and coatings on them, so you will get a softer effect. If you're looking for something more saturated and more vibrant, I would highly recommend using fresh flowers and leaves from your yard or a park, like you can see here. These are just some leaves and flowers I gathered from my yard, and as you can tell, the color is so much more vibrant and saturated, but they are both still beautiful nonetheless.